The knock came after midnight, in the worst of the October rain. Cora Thrale was still at her workbench when she heard it. Not a polite knock, but the flat, open-handed knock of someone who had been walking a long time and had run out of ceremony. She had been grinding dried meadowsweet into a paste for old Mr. Tiverton's joints, and she set the pestle down and wiped her hands on her apron and went to the door. The girl on her step was perhaps 16. Her cloak was soaked through, and her cap was gone entirely, and she was holding her own elbows as though she needed to keep herself from coming apart. "Mrs. Thrale," she said, "please. He's been down 3 days and the physician won't come back." "Who has been down?" Cora asked. "His lordship, Lord Stroud. He fell at dinner Thursday, and he hasn't been right since. He won't keep anything. There's foam." The girl pressed her lips together. "There was foam earlier. Ruth sent me. Ruth said to fetch you. There's no one else." Cora looked past her into the dark. Rain ran flat off the eaves. The lane was already a river. She had a fire laid, a cat asleep on the settle, 1/2 pound of meadowsweet still to grind. She had told herself, last winter, after the second fever swept through Trevorrow, that she was done with great houses and their troubles. "Wait," she said. She went back inside for her bag. She did not know, as she latched the door behind her, that she would not open it again for 12 days. The girl's name was Nan. She told Cora this in the trap, between chattering teeth. She had run the 2 miles from Aldenmere House on foot because the coachman was away, and the stableman, old Jem, had a bad leg and could not manage the horses in the dark. She had taken the lane, not the cliff road. She had fallen once in the mud. 3 days, Cora said. "He has been ill 3 days, and the physician only came once." Dr. Corley came Thursday evening. He said it was the stomach. He said rest and broth. He hasn't come since. Nan's hands knotted in her lap. Ruth sent for him yesterday. He sent back a note. He said his lordship's colour had improved. "Has it?" "No, ma'am." Cora said nothing. She watched the road climb into the dark above the village and thought about Dr. Corley and his note. She had met Corley twice. He had looked at her dispensary with the expression of a man smelling something unpleasant, and had called her a charming little cottage industry in front of the vicar's wife. She thought also about Aldenmere House. She had never been inside it. Her father had been called there once, when she was 10, for a boy who had broken his arm in the stables. Her father had come home and said the house smelled of money and old grief in equal measure. She thought about the girl in the lane who had run 2 miles in the dark in October rain because there was no one else to send for. She watched the gatehouse lamps come up pale and yellow through the trees, and she did not think about anything else after that. The great hall of Aldenmere smelled of wood smoke and something beneath it, something sweet and chemical, faintly wrong, and Cora identified it before she had crossed the threshold. She stopped. She breathed it in twice. Then she followed Nan up the stairs without a word. Lord Evander Stroud was on his side on the rug in the library. He had clearly been moved from a chair. Recently, someone had folded a coat beneath his head and placed his feet together as though order might help. His breathing was uneven, with long gaps that made Cora count against her own pulse. His lips were cracked. There was a half-empty glass of wine on the desk above him, and she did not touch it. Nan and a second girl, Ruth, older, red-eyed, stood at the door with a lamp between them. "How long has the fire been out?" Cora asked. "Since this morning. We couldn't. He kept asking us to close the shutters and then asking us to open them." "Confusion," Cora said. She was already beside him, 2 fingers at his throat. The pulse was there, weak, irregular, insufficient. She looked at his fingernails, at the whites of his eyes when she lifted one lid carefully. She looked at the skin on his hands. "Has he had anything tonight?" "Broth and his wine. He takes a glass in the evening. He's been taking it all week." "Who pours it?" Ruth's eyes shifted, just slightly, just for a moment. "Mrs. Hartley lays it out. Anyone might pour." Cora set that aside. She would come back to it. She asked for water, for clean cloths, for more wood for the fire. She talked to the man on the floor while she worked. She did not know if he could hear her. It did not matter. She had learned, in 12 years of helping her father and 7 of working alone, that a voice was worth something to a body that was trying to decide whether to keep fighting. She told him her name. She told him she was going to turn him. She told him to breathe. At 1:30 in the morning, his eyes opened. He looked at the ceiling for a long time. Then he looked at her. "You're not Corley," he said. His voice was a ruin. "No, my lord, I'm Cora Thrale. I'm the apothecary's daughter from the village." Corley said I was improving. "Corley is not here." He closed his eyes. She thought he had gone back under. Then he said, "My sister's child. The infant is in the nursery. Nan is with him." Cora set a damp cloth against the back of his neck. "He is fed and sleeping. He was born 8 days ago." "I know." She asked me. He stopped. "Clara asked me before. She wrote it in a letter. She said if anything happened, I was to keep the boy." He breathed for a moment. "I was supposed to keep her too." Cora did not answer. She held her hand flat against his shoulder so he would know where she was, and she stayed quiet, and the fire began to draw. At 3 he could swallow. At 5 he asked for water and drank 4 small cups of it, one after another, and kept them all down. At 7, when the grey dawn came in through the east window, he was still on the floor. She had not moved him, would not move him until he was stronger, but his pulse had steadied and his eyes were clear. "You've been here all night," he said. "Yes." "Why?" She thought of several answers. She gave the true one, because Nan knocked on my door and I said yes. He looked at her then, properly, in the way of a man who had been ill enough to stop caring about surfaces and could now see only what was actually in front of him. "Will you stay?" he said. "Until you're on your feet. I don't know how long that will be." "Neither do I," she said. "That's the nature of it." She learned the house in the days that followed. There were 4 servants left at Aldenmere: Ruth, Nan, Mrs. Hartley the cook, and Jem the stableman. There had been more: a housekeeper, a footman, a lady's maid who had come with Clara from her late husband's household in Halifax. The housekeeper had left in the spring. The footman had left when Clara died. The lady's maid had gone the day after the funeral. There was also Mr. Quinlan, the estate steward, who came each morning and stood in the doorway of Lord Stroud's room and looked at Cora with an expression she could not entirely read. He asked questions about his lordship's improvement. He wrote letters at the desk in the hall and sealed them before she could see the direction. And there was the matter of the wine. On the second day, Cora asked Nan to bring her the decanter from the library. She poured a small measure into a glass vial she kept in her bag. She held it to the light. She set it aside. On the third day, Lord Stroud sat up. "You look," he said, "like a woman who knows something she isn't saying." "I have a suspicion," Cora said. "I won't say it until I'm certain." "Say the suspicion." "No," she handed him the broth. "Drink." He drank. He watched her over the rim of the cup with eyes the colour of late November water, grey and still and very much present. "You're not afraid of me," he said. "You're sitting up in bed wrapped in 2 blankets. I've been more frightened by the Trevorrow weather." Something moved across his face. Not quite a smile. Close enough. "She rose to check the fire," he said behind her. "My sister spoke of you." Cora's hand stilled on the poker. "Clara mentioned the apothecary's daughter from the village," she said, "last summer, that if her time came hard she wanted you, not whatever man Corley might send from town." He paused. "I told her Corley would manage. I told her he always had." "My lord." "I should have sent for you in August," he said. "She died in September." He said it flat, without inflection, the way one said a true and finished thing. "I should have sent for you before she came home. I should have sent for you the day she arrived. I did not. I let Corley have his way, and I let her die. And now I am lying here being kept alive by the woman I should have called 4 months earlier. That is what is wrong with me, Mrs. Thrale, more than whatever is in the wine." Cora stood at the fireplace a moment. Then she said, "His name, the boy, has he got a name?" "Not yet." "Clara will have had one in mind." "Probably." He looked at the window. "There is a letter in the desk in the library. She wrote it before she came home. She would have had a name in it." He was quiet. "I haven't been able to open the desk." She did not press him. There would be time. On the 4th morning, Evander Stroud ate breakfast at the window in a chair, and Cora sat across from him with a tray between them. She had thinned the porridge with cream. She had not touched the tea that Ruth had brought. She never did now. She poured water from the pitcher she filled herself each morning. "You don't drink the tea," he said. "I make my own." She gestured to the small pot she had prepared at the kitchen fire. He considered this because of the wine. She looked at him. "I'm not as confused as I was," he said quietly. "I've been watching what you pour and what you leave. You think there's something in this house." She set down her spoon. "I think you have been given something in doses small enough to be gradual and large enough to do real damage. I think it has been going on for several weeks. I think it is in the wine, or was in the wine." She folded her hands. "I think this house knows more than I do." He was still, "Whom do you suspect?" "I will tell you when I have proof." "Corley." "No, Corley is a coward and a poor physician. He is not a murderer." She picked up her spoon. "Eat." He ate. He watched her the way she had noticed him watching, carefully, without appearing to. "My husband," Cora said, without fully knowing why she said it. "His name was Peter. He was a fisherman. He went out in a northeast swell 4 years ago because the season had been poor and we needed the money. He didn't come back." Evander said nothing. He waited. "We had a daughter, Eleanor. She was 2 years old. She died of scarlet fever the winter after Peter." Cora set the spoon in the bowl. "I say her name very seldom, because there is no one left who knew her well enough to say it with me. I said it just now. That is more than I usually manage in a week." He did not offer consolation. He did not offer the particular awful comfort of people who had not lost a child. He said, "Eleanor." He said it simply, as though returning something she had handed him. "And Peter?" "Yes." He looked at his bowl. "Clara," he said, "was my twin. We were born within the same quarter hour. She was first. She married a man in Halifax, a good man, not a clever one, and he died the year before last, and she came home to have the baby. She asked me to keep her here." He stopped. "I kept her for 8 days." "You kept her child," Cora said. "That is what she asked." He looked at the window. The sea below Aldenmere was brown and rough, the colour of old pewter. "Will you stay?" he said. Not the way he had said it the first night, from the floor, from the bottom of a long illness. Something different this time. Cora said, "I'm still here." On the 5th morning, Mr. Noel Fitch arrived at Aldenmere in a hired carriage. Cora saw him from the nursery window. She had been walking the infant, Clara's boy, still unnamed, 3 weeks old and inclined toward a particular brand of fury that only motion could address, when the wheels sounded on the gravel. The man who stepped down wore a good coat and a soldier's posture, and the expression of someone taking stock of a property. She had heard the name. Quinlan had mentioned it. Noel Fitch, Evander's first cousin, the man who would inherit Aldenmere if Evander died without a legitimate heir, and the infant was ruled a ward of the crown rather than of the house. She carried the boy to Evander's room. "He looks like a man arriving to take inventory," she said. Evander's jaw tightened. He usually does. He was sitting up against the bolster, stronger every day, but still thin, still careful with his movements. How does he look otherwise? Well rested, pleased. She shifted the baby to her other shoulder. "He will try to sit at the foot of the bed." "I know how Noel sits." "Make him stand. You are unwell, but you are not diminished. If he sits, he has already decided you are beneath him. Don't let him decide it." Evander looked at her. "You've done this before." "I've been at bedsides when solicitors came to read wills," she said. "I know the geometry of it." She moved the extra bolster behind his back so he sat higher. She drew the curtain halfway so the light would be at his back and on his cousin's face. She set the water she had poured on the table at his right hand and the baby in the crook of his left arm. "There," she said. "You have your air and your wits, and 3 weeks of surviving what someone put in your wine. Let him speak first." Evander looked down at the infant in his arm, with an expression Cora had not seen him wear before, something unguarded and overwhelmed and trying very hard not to be. "He weighs nothing," Evander said. "He weighs 9 pounds. He is considerably more than nothing." "I haven't." He stopped. "I haven't held him before now." "I know." She did not take the baby back. "Hold him a while longer." There were footsteps in the hall. She put her hands at her sides and stayed where she was. Noel Fitch was perhaps 30, fair-haired with his cousin's good bones, and a mouth that smiled very readily. He was, Cora thought, the kind of man who always smiled while he was watching. He stopped at the threshold. His gaze went to Evander, then to the baby, then to Cora. Evander, warm, solicitous, the exact pitch of a worried relation. I came as soon as Quinlan's letter arrived. You look dreadful. Thank you, Noel. I drove from London in 2 days. The roads are a disaster past Exeter. He stepped into the room. His eyes settled briefly on Cora. And this is Mrs. Thrale, Evander said. She has been attending me. Ah, the village woman. Fitch smiled at her. Thank you very much, Mrs. Thrale. You may leave us. My cousin and I have family matters to discuss. Cora stayed where she was. Cora remains, Evander said. The infant is in her care. There's a nursery maid. Cora remains. Fitch's smile held. He sat, at the foot of the bed exactly as Cora had said he would. She caught Evander's eye and gave the smallest possible tilt of her head. Let it stand. He let it stand. Evander. Fitch folded his hands. His voice was kind, the most careful kindness Cora had ever heard, calibrated like a scale. I am not going to pretend I'm not concerned. You have been insensible for the better part of 2 weeks. Your own physician has barely attended. You have an infant in your care with no household to support him. Clara is barely in the ground. He paused. There is provision for this. You know there is. The estate cannot run in uncertainty. The boy cannot be raised in uncertainty. What are you proposing? Evander's voice was even. Temporary guardianship, mine over both the estate and the child, until you are fully recovered. We do it through the proper channels. Sir Aldous Vane at the county court, a brief filing, everything documented. It protects you as much as the boy. Fitch leaned forward slightly. His voice dropped to something almost tender. And I must say it plainly, cousin. There is the question of your capacity. Quinlan's letters suggest the delirium was prolonged. I would be failing you if I didn't raise it. The room was very quiet. Open the curtain, Evander said. Cora opened it. October light came across the room, and across Fitch's hands on the coverlet, and across the water glass on the bedside table. Fitch's eyes went to the water glass for just a moment. They came back. Sir Aldous may come on Friday, Evander said. The hearing may be at the county court. Bring Quinlan, bring Corley if you choose, bring the vicar. He looked at his cousin steadily. I am sitting up, Noel. I am eating. I am holding my sister's son, who has been kept alive by this woman, and by Hannah Trewin, who comes from the village, and not by any provision of yours. On Friday I will say so. Fitch rose. Something had gone from his face. Just for a moment, the colour drained out and then came back, and the smile came back with it. He bowed to Evander. He bowed to Cora, a precise bow meant to be noticed. I will see myself out, he said, Mrs. Thrale. He went. Cora closed the door. She turned. Evander said, he'll have something else before Friday. Yes. He will have spoken to Quinlan already. He looked at the baby in his arm. I should marry you, he said, before he comes back. Cora did not look away from the door, for the protection. Yes, I release you after if you wish it, everything settled. But if I go before that court a bachelor with a nameless infant and no household, Noel has a case and we both know it. He paused. It is a great deal to ask. I know what it is, Cora said. You don't have to. By Friday morning, she said, before the hearing, we marry at the church, and then we go to the court, and whatever comes after, comes after. She picked up the water glass and held it to the light. What did you see just now, when I opened the curtain? He said slowly. He looked at the glass. Yes, she set it down. He came to this room, and the first thing he looked at, before he looked at you, before he looked at the child, was the glass by your bed. She turned. From tonight you drink only what I pour. He closed his eyes. He nodded. She took the baby back and walked him to the nursery and stood at the window and watched Noel Fitch cross the gravel toward the gatehouse with the stride of a man who had not been surprised, only delayed. The night before the hearing, Cora did not sleep. Evander slept. The baby slept. The house settled into its quiet, the kind that old stone houses carry like a second weather. Cora sat at the small desk in the housekeeper's room they had given her off the east corridor and looked at the vial she had taken from the decanter 4 days ago. She had tested it that morning in the kitchen, alone, with her portable scales, and the small reagent case her father had given her at 15. The result had been what she had suspected and had not hoped for. She thought about Peter. She had not thought of him steadily in more than a year. He came to her tonight in the way grief came when you had finally decided to let it be a thing that had happened, rather than a thing that was still happening, in the specific weight of a memory softened at its edges. The sound of his boots on the cottage step, the way he had sung off-key and known it and not cared, the grey morning he had gone out with the wrong kind of sky, and she had stood in the doorway and watched him go, because there was no point saying "don't" when the season was poor and the rent was due and he was Peter. And Peter always came back. He had not come back. She thought of Eleanor. She let herself think of her daughter's name the way she rarely did, fully, holding it without putting it down. Eleanor. Our Ellie, Peter had called her. Their Ellie had lived 2 years and 4 months, and had died in February with her arms around Cora's neck. She thought, I have said both their names tonight. I have given them to the dark in a house where no one knew them. That is enough. A door opened in the corridor. She knew his step before it reached her, slow, careful, the walk of a man still conserving himself. She did not move. He knocked at the doorframe. She said, "Come in." He stood in the door with a coat thrown over his nightshirt and his feet bare on the boards. He looked at her face in the lamplight. "You haven't slept," he said. "Not yet. I heard you earlier, testing something in the kitchen." She looked at the vial on the desk. "Arsenic," she said, "in the wine. A small dose, repeated over a number of weeks, enough to look like a persistent illness, enough to look like grief." She folded her hands. "There is also the apothecary's purchase ledger in the village. Mr. Hallett keeps his accounts very carefully. If the arsenic was bought at Hallett's, under the Aldenmere account, there will be a record." She looked up. "If Fitch sent Quinlan to buy it, and Quinlan is the only man in this house who could have done it without questions, it will be in the book under Quinlan's hand and Fitch's account." "Quinlan," Evander said. He said it without surprise. Only a quiet, settled confirmation. I wondered. "I will go to Hallett's in the morning, before the hearing." "Cora." He moved into the room and sat in the chair across from her. "It's 4 miles to the village. The hearing is at 10. "I know the road." She set her hands flat on the desk. "If I leave at 5, I'm at Hallett's by 6:30. His wife will have the fire on. I'll have the ledger by 7 and be back here by 8. We marry at 8:30. We go to the court at 10. She looked at him. "I have walked that road in the dark before." He watched her in the lamplight with the quality of attention he had had since the first night. The attention of a man who had come through something and now looked at things without the social veil that ordinary health permits. "I sent for you," he said. "Not Corley. I had Nan swear to it 3 days before I fell, when I first felt the symptoms and couldn't account for them. I told her, if anything happens, go to the village, go to Mrs. Thrale." He set his hands on his knees. "Your name had come to me in September after Clara died. I asked around the village. Every woman I asked said the same thing. The apothecary's daughter, the one who stayed when there was no one else, the one who knew." He paused. "I should have said go to Mrs. Thrale 4 months earlier, before Clara came home. I should have sent for you the day she wrote from Halifax. I did not. I let Corley have his way, and I let her die." He said it the same way he said everything now, flat against the boards, no room for argument. "That is my debt, not yours." Cora looked at him across the lamplight. She said, "You haven't asked me." "I beg your pardon." "Whether I will marry you. You proposed it as a plan. You haven't asked." He was quiet for a moment. "If you said no, I would have no other plan worth making." She rose from the desk. She crossed to where he sat. She stood at the chair and set her hand against his cheek, the same way she had set it at his throat on the first night, when she was counting his pulse in the dark and talking to him about breathing. She held it there. He let her. "I will marry you," she said. Yes, he set his own hand briefly over hers. "Now go and sleep," she said. "You have a long morning." He went. She blew out the lamp. She lay down on the narrow bed and looked at the ceiling until sleep found her, which was almost an hour. She was at Hallett's by 6:15. The village apothecary's wife opened the kitchen door on the second knock, took one look at Cora's face, and put a cup of tea in her hand without asking a word. Mr. Hallett came down in his coat and his spectacles and his 35 years of keeping careful books. He found the page in less than 2 minutes. Quinlan came in September, he said, and again in October, twice in October. He turned the ledger so Cora could see, signed for by Quinlan. Charged to the Fitch account, arsenic, listed as pest control. He looked up over his spectacles. I thought nothing of it. Estates buy arsenic for pest control. It's ordinary enough. How much? He read the quantities. Cora wrote them in her notebook. She wrote the dates, Quinlan's signature, Fitch's account number, the exact wording of each entry, because she had learned from her father that the specific wording was always the thing that mattered. "I'll come myself," Hallett said. "I'll bring the ledger and swear to every entry." "Can you be at the court by 10? "My son-in-law has the cart. He'll have you at Aldenmere's gates by 7:30. He was already closing the ledger. He looked at her, the way he had looked at her since she was 10 years old, and helping her father measure powders at this same counter. He was 63. He had stood beside her at Peter's funeral without speaking, which was exactly what she had needed. "Cora, look at me." She looked. "You've done harder things than this." He set the ledger in her hands. "Go, and come back with everything they owe you." She got into the cart. They were married at 8:30 in the church of St. Bridget by the Reverend Mr. Colworth. Hallett witnessed. Ruth witnessed. The vicar could not find flowers in October and offered Cora the prayer book from the lectern instead, and she held it with both hands because her hands needed something to do. Evander stood straight. He had walked from the carriage to the church door on Cora's arm, and he had let go at the door because he would not be seen assisted at his own wedding. His voice during the vows was clear and unornamented, the voice of a man who had decided something and was not going to undecide it. When it was done, the vicar spoke the words, and Evander turned to her, and he set his hand to her face the way she had set her hand to his face in the night, and he kissed her once, briefly, deliberately, a paper kiss, a witnessed kiss, and something else beneath it that she felt in the steadiness of his hand and did not examine. Not yet. "My wife," he said. The clerk wrote it down. They were at the county court by 10. Fitch arrived with 2 solicitors and a physician from Truro, and a petition under his arm, and a warm, practised smile. He stopped inside the chamber door when he saw the room. Cora sat at Evander's right, the baby, finally named that morning, in the carriage on the way to the church, Charles, because Clara had written it in the letter that Evander had finally opened the night before, lay in Cora's arms. Hallett sat 2 chairs down with the ledger. Ruth sat at the wall with the notebook Cora had asked her to maintain from the first day. Every cup poured, every meal served, every visitor received, every date. Sir Aldous Vane, the county magistrate, was a careful man with a slow way of reading that Cora respected immediately. He looked at Fitch and said, "We have other matters first, Captain. Please be seated." Fitch looked at his cousin. He looked at the baby. He looked last at Cora in her grey dress with the prayer book still at her wrist. "May I ask," he said slowly, "who this woman is?" "You may," said Evander. "She is my wife. We were married this morning. Sir Aldous witnessed it himself." The room was very quiet. Fitch sat. His hands on the table were perfectly, deliberately still, and Cora watched them the way she had watched his eyes when they went to the water glass. Sir Aldous read slowly. He read the ledger. He read the dates of purchase against the dates in Ruth's notebook. He read the vile report Cora had written that morning, in her most careful hand. He read without comment for a long time. When he looked up, his face was the colour of cold ash. "Mr. Fitch," he said. "The record before me shows the purchase of arsenic from Mr. Hallett's establishment on 5 separate occasions between the 14th of September and the 2nd of October. Each purchase was charged to your personal account at Aldenmere. Each was signed for by the estate steward, Mr. Quinlan, in your name." He paused. "Mr. Hallett is present and will swear to every entry. Mr. Quinlan, I will note, is not present this morning, and his absence has been noted and acted upon." He set the ledger down. "Is this your account, Mr. Fitch?" Fitch looked at the ledger for a long time. "It is," he said. He said it like a soldier. Straight final, because the signature was his, and Mr. Hallett had 4 men in the village who could swear to it. However, I require the opportunity to examine this ledger with counsel before any. Cora stood up. She had not meant to. She had meant to let Sir Aldous and Evander manage it. She was a village woman with a 3-week-old infant in her arms, and no standing in this room beyond a marriage 1 hour and 40 minutes old. She stood anyway. 5 times, she said. 5 times your man came to Hallett's, and 5 times the poison came into this house, and 3 nights I poured the water that kept your cousin breathing. She looked at Fitch across the table. The court will decide what it decides. But there is a child here who has not got a mother because of what you chose, and I want that said plainly before anything else proceeds. She sat down. Charles made one small sound against her shoulder and was still. No one in the room moved. Sir Aldous said at last, "Mr. Fitch, the constables are at the door." Quinlan was taken at the Truro Road at noon. He made a full accounting to the magistrate that afternoon in exchange for considerations that were documented, named, and placed on record, because Cora had told Sir Aldous before the hearing that she intended to see every name written down and every consequence attached to it. Quinlan's sentence was recorded. Fitch's charge was recorded. The purchase ledger was entered into evidence, and its pages catalogued one by one. Nothing was left unfinished. Nothing was left to chance or to the word of someone who might prefer it forgotten. The petition was dismissed. The guardianship was confirmed, Evander and Cora beside him, and Charles between them by law and by the morning's register. 14 months passed. There was a reception at Aldenmere the following spring, because Sir Aldous said one was expected, and Evander said, "Let the village come," and the village came. Fishermen and farmers and Hallett and his wife and Hannah Trewin, with her youngest on her hip. They ate and drank in the long hall, and they looked at the new Lady Stroud in her plain dark dress, with the frank, measuring attention of people who had known her as a girl, and were deciding now whether she had become someone else. She had not. She had become more fully herself, which is a different thing. At the end of the evening, Evander stood beside her in the doorway while the last guests went out into the May dark. "You did well," he said. "I didn't say anything I regret," she said. "That's the best I can usually manage with large gatherings." "For these people," he said, "it's the same thing." She looked out at the drive, at the gatehouse lamps, at the dark of the old orchard beyond. She thought of the cliff road. She had not walked it since October. She had meant to, before the winter came in, and then the winter had come in, and there had been Charles in the hearing's aftermath, and learning a house she had not grown up in. She had let it stand. "Tomorrow," she said, "I'm going to walk to the village." "I'll come." "Alone," she said the first time. He looked at her profile for a moment, the way he had learned to look at things, careful, unhurried, not pressing. "All right," he said. She went in the morning, down the cliff road she had not walked in 14 months, down the chalk-white path between the stone walls, with the May sea below the cliff and the air full of birds. Charles was with Nan. Evander was at his desk with the estate books. The day was soft and clear. She came to the place where the path narrowed, where the flat grey stone on the left wall had always been her landmark. She stopped. She set her hand on the stone. "Peter," she said, to the air and the sea and no one who was still there to hear, "I have walked it. I have a husband who did not drown. I have a boy whose mother asked me to keep him, and I am keeping him. I have learned the name of every room in a house I didn't grow up in, and I am learning still. Eleanor is with you. She has been with you a long time. You will look after her." She did not cry. She was 30 years old, and she had said what needed saying. She straightened. She turned. She walked back up the cliff road in the May morning, with the sun behind her and the sound of the sea below, and when she came through the orchard gate, Evander was there. He had Charles at his shoulder, and the gate open, and the good sense not to have brought any words with him. "Well?" he said. "Well." She took the boy into her arms. She took her husband's offered hand. They walked back through the orchard toward the house where the windows were open in the morning light, and Ruth and Nan could be heard at some domestic dispute in the kitchen, and where there was, on the desk in the library, a letter Cora had drafted to the county court, confirming the final accounting of Noel Fitch's charge, because the debt would be named, completely and on record, and she intended to see every part of it through to the end. Charles put his fist in her hair and pulled. "Ow," she said. "He has been doing that since breakfast," Evander said. "He gets it from his mother," Cora said without thinking. And then she heard herself and went quiet, and Evander's hand tightened once around hers. They walked on. The house was ahead of them, solid and old, and full of the particular sounds of a house with people in it again. A cart was coming up the lane from the village. The orchard was loud with birds. She had not stayed because she had been sent for. She had stayed because she had chosen, and she was choosing still, with every step across the grass, and every name she said aloud, and every morning she rose in a house that was becoming hers, not by accident, not by circumstance, but by the long, deliberate work of a woman who knew that staying was not the same thing as being kept. She walked through the gate. She walked across the orchard. She went in.